What is going on? It's Dave Umphress in Denver, Colorado. Hey, I made a video a couple days ago about the difference between investing in liabilities versus assets and how the wealthy in general in this country have built wealth through investing in assets. I spent all day yesterday with a billionaire mentor of mine who it's impossible to talk to this guy for 5 minutes, let alone 8 hours straight, without thinking differently about wealth building. And he built his net worth almost entirely through real estate. And it's impossible to not walk away from that thinking bigger, thinking different, and wanting to help other people think differently and bigger as well. I've been running out this example in the last week since I made that video about playing out the scenario of a 5-year span of investing in a liability versus investing in an asset, and just kind of getting a feel for what that looks like after 5 years and just the reality that people think very differently about this. So let's run through the example. It's going to be fun. It's asset Al versus liability Larry. Let's pretend they're brothers. They both had $50,000 to invest, and this is how they did it. Okay, so asset Al bought a $200,000 piece of real estate. He put $50,000 down, and based on approximate interest rates right now and taxes, insurance, obviously different in different parts of the country, but after payments and a $1,500 a month rent, which is very reasonable in most areas for a purchase price around $200,000, he would cash flow around $500 a month. Okay, these are round, simple numbers to keep it easy. Now, $500 a month is what a lot of investors look for, $400 to $500 a month in cash flow for the rental property to make sense for them. Okay, so in this particular example, he took out a $150,000 mortgage, bought the $200,000 house with his $50,000 down. So let's run out this example through 5 years, and then we will talk about what liability Larry bought. So after 1 year, the $50,000 that is appreciated, that is seeing $500 a month in cash flow, would be $56,000 after 1 year. Excuse me. The property value, so most parts of the country, the average we talk about typically is around 4%. Most of the country in the last 6 years has seen significantly higher than that, and of course up and down, but lots of times in the Denver area for 2 or 3 years straight, we were seeing 10 to 12% appreciation, which is crazy. But we're talking very reasonable numbers here. We're not going to talk shock value numbers, so we're going to say just 4%, just to keep it nice and simple. That $200,000 piece of real estate is now worth $208,000. And so between the $6,000 gain in his cash flow at $500 a month and the $8,000 gain in his appreciation of the property, that $50,000 after year 1 is worth $64,000. Okay. Now year 2, let's see, after 2 years of that cash flow, that $56,000 has now increased to $62,000. The property value has appreciated another 4%, so now it's at $216,000. Which means his $50,000 cash-on-cash investment is now up to $78,000. Year 3. So we continue to see $500 a month cash flow. Now this doesn't take into consideration that oftentimes rents raise and that cash flow you could refinance. You could create a larger delta between the expense and the rent to increase the cash flow. But for our example, we're going to keep it right at $500 a month. So after year 3, now we're up to $68,000. Our property value has appreciated again from $208 now up to $225. And that brings a total value of that $50,000 now after year 3 to $93,000. Year 4, we're up to $74. I'm going to go quickly through these now. Our property value is now at $234. Which means our total value of our $50,000 now is $108,000. Year 5, let's see, our $80,000 is what our 50 is up to with cash flow. Our property value is now $243,500. And our total difference now, our $50,000 is now worth $123,500. And this doesn't take into consideration the fact that a lot of people that think this way by this point have probably pulled some of that cash out to go invest in another piece of property or have maybe diversified some. But if you did keep everything in there and continued to cash flow and continued to pay down, you're paying down the mortgage on the property, you're increasing your value of your $50,000 through that cash flow. Your $50,000 at the end of 5 years is $123,500. Not bad for a 5-year investment. Now, that is somebody that invests in assets. And of course, like I said, this person would probably by this point have been investing in lots of different assets, not just in this one piece of property. But that's, for a lot of people, that's life-changing money. And unfortunately, what a majority of the population does is we love throwing money at things that do not cash flow, that just take money, that make us look good or look like we have maybe live a different life than we actually live, or we have some image we want to uphold. But for whatever reason, we throw a lot of money at liabilities that just take money from us every month and don't actually create any wealth. If anything, they're just getting rid of wealth that we had that we're throwing at this thing. So for the example, like I said, I'm not looking for shock value here. I want it to seem as reasonable as possible. So I grabbed the one car with the highest resale value in the country, and that's a Toyota Tacoma. After 3 years, that Toyota Tacoma is still worth 69% of its original purchase price, which is crazy. That's an incredibly great resale value. After 5 years, it's only dropped from 69 down to 62%. I think it was 62.2%, which is astonishing. I mean, good for Toyota for building a vehicle that holds its value that well. And so that's the example we're going to use, which is extremely reasonable. Now, I did grab numbers on a BMW 5 Series as well, which doesn't have as great of a resale value, but after 5 years in that car, it's down to about 32% of its value. So we'll see the numbers for both of them. But in this first example, our $50,000 after 5 years was worth $123,500. Okay. Now let's look at the Tacoma. After 3 years, like I said, 62.2% of that value. Let's pretend we paid cash for that car, $50,000. After 3 years, that car is worth $34,700. Okay. 34,700. Now, this is the craziest part to me, is that after 5 years, it's only dropped from 69 to 62%, which is awesome, but that car still now is only worth $31,100. And just for fun, the BMW 5 Series, after those 5 years, now you got to keep in mind every car costs different amounts, and so we're just saying, assuming there was a $50,000 purchase price at this percentage. Now, if you bought a $75,000 car, of course you'd have to adjust the math. If you bought a $30,000 car, you get the point. But in this example, we're pretending these cars both cost the same. That $50,000 BMW 5 Series after 5 years is worth $16,350. So there you go. Asset Al invested his $50,000 in a piece of cash flowing real estate that a tenant was paying down the mortgage on, that he was cash flowing $500 a month on, and that the property was appreciating in value over time. That $50,000 is worth $123,500. On liability, Larry, that invested in a liability, is $50,000 is worth $31,100 after 5 years. Or if he was not as wise and bought a car with not as great of a resale value, it was worth about $16,000. So I hope that raises a slight amount of awareness around the fact that people that build wealth over time choose to take their money, and maybe they don't enjoy as great of liabilities that a lot of our country does. Maybe they drive a car that they don't enjoy as much, or maybe they shy away from overspending on the vacation or on the hobby or on whatever it is, and instead they take that money and choose to invest in assets. And like lots of financial, I think Dave Ramsey says that a lot. Live like no one else today, so that you can live like no one else tomorrow. This idea that you're choosing to invest in assets that are building long-term wealth instead of investing in liabilities that just make you feel good right now. So, hope that's helpful. Have a great day. See ya.